Vegetam de Kilo cheese. Parmigiano Reggiano, Roquefort Brie de Meaux, and Monchegoro, River Blue and Gouda. Asiago, Wensleydale, and Roquefort, Reblochon, Halloumi, Feta, Gorgonzola cheese. Oh, Monterey Jack, Fidulata, Pecorino, Swiss Gruyere. I love a Vegetam de Kilo cheese.
New Zealand exports more dairy products than any country in the world, and its commodity cheeses are renowned for their predictable quality and price. But in the last 2 decades, consumers here have started to demand more interesting farmhouse and artisan cheeses with character and sense of place. Many of them never leave the country, so I've come here to find out more about them. European migrants first began dairy farming in New Zealand in the early 1800s. But it was not until the development of refrigerated shipping towards the end of that century that farmer-owned cooperative dairies began to export significant quantities of low-cost cheese and butter back to Mother England. Today, this beautiful island country, located in the southwestern Pacific Ocean, is home to far more cows and sheep than people. And I'm here to look at the revival of small-scale cheesemaking. This movement began 3 decades ago when migrant cheesemakers from the Netherlands adapted traditional Dutch recipes and began making local cheese from cows, goats, and even ewe's milk. My first stop is Canterbury Cheesemongers in Christchurch, which is owned by Sarah and Martin Aspinwall. I've known the couple from when they worked for Neal's Yard Dairy in London. And since returning to the Shaky Isles, I've watched with interest how they've lobbied for changes in national food regulations, which recently allowed the use of raw milk for local cheesemaking. And here it is, Canterbury Cheesemongers on a very wet day. The best cheese shop in New Zealand. Their large climate-controlled cheese room offers customers a range of carefully selected international and New Zealand artisan cheese. And after a quick tour, I asked them which local cheeses they would recommend.
This is a wash rind one as opposed to their
regular Neworf Pecorino.
And they also make yoghurt.
So where's this from again?
Just near Nelson, Moosery. So that's their
so I
yoghurt
should go
that
there?
they do. Yep,
You should go
definitely.
there. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Some of the Dutch cheesemakers have kind of restarted this movement back to proper cheese, really, in New Zealand. But then the Dutch families, whether it's the Meyers or the Rosevears.
And there's Mercer cheese as well.
Mercer cheese as well, near Auckland.
So they're the kind of
So the Dutch have really sort of put artisan cheese on the map in New Zealand.
Yeah,
I think they
and
have.
I think, you know, the Dutch immigrants, they were just real foodies and they weren't going to put up with that rubbish cheese at the supermarket, you know. And so the cheesemakers had a ready-made market and it overlapped into regular New Zealanders enjoying those cheeses as well.
And they were
Really-
small scale.
Yeah, they were
you
small
know,
scale.
they weren't
yeah.
huge. They weren't big,
and
huge factories.
And they are still all quite small scale.
Yeah.
Martin is a professional baker, and as luck would have it, he was preparing the first batch of his famous Eckles Cakes when I arrived. These are made from what he calls roof puff, flaky pastry made with plenty of rich cultured butter.
So to make an Eckles cake, we make 16 out of a batch, so we split that.
After dividing the pastry into single serves, Martin rolls each one out, brushes them with an egg wash, and then adds his special mixture of spiced fruit filling.
Sometimes you get Eckles cakes and they've got no spice. They're just currants, a bit of butter, some rough puff pastry, and they're not brilliant, you know. And
What do your kids call that?
I think you call them fly cemeteries or something like that, and they taste just like something dead, actually. You need those spices, and you want a tablespoon, and you put a tablespoon of this mix in the middle.
The pastry parcels are then folded up and placed onto an oven tray, and a quick egg glaze is brushed on.
When you're doing mince pies, you give mince pies that lovely little tail, and they look beautiful. But on Eckles Cakes, it doesn't look so good.
OK.
They're better if you go straight down vertical. Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
Hey!
And there's your
And in the
Eckles
oven.
Cakes. And in the oven they go.
How long for?
They want about half an hour at about 180.
Great. Once golden brown,
So-
it's time for a taste.
Wash your hands.
Oh, look at
Look at that curd. Lancashire's always been my favourite, and I think it goes back to university days. Well, it's one of the great northern cheeses, isn't it? With Wensleydale and Cheshire, and these are what I grew up on. So, gorgeous cheese. So we're going to score that again.
Very nice cheese. And then, the moment of truth. You're right.
They were really that sweet and savoury. And where I come from in the north of England, whether it was a piece of Wensleydale with a piece of apple pie, or whether it was a piece of Eccles cake and a piece of Lancashire, they'd always be together.
You know what? It's absolutely fantastic combination. And you even start talking funny. Eh, bargum. That's really, really good. Really good.
No.
My first stop is a small prize-winning dairy not far from Nelson, which, believe it or not, was the first dairy in New Zealand to make ewe's milk cheese in the late 1990s and is still one of only 3 ewe's milk dairies in the entire country. New Zealand is home to more sheep than people, but until recently they were bred for meat and wool rather than for producing milk. This dairy herd behind me is one of the first to be introduced to the South Island. They're responsible for the fabulous cheeses of Neworf Dairy. The unusual thing about this farm is that after a number of management changes over the years, it's almost entirely run by women. I was lucky enough to catch up with one of them, young Julie Brownlee-Webb, who was rounding up the sheep at milking time.
I always wanted to do something different, and I always knew I wanted to work with animals. So I started here as an apprentice, and now I'm the farm manager. Still learning, of course, and training, and I love it. So total, we have 1,400 milking ewes on farm, and we would like to milk probably about 500 to 600 all year round.
After a quick look around the dairy, I was keen to try some of the famous cheese at the farm's small shop. Looking at the flock, you can't help but be impressed by how clean and happy and relaxed they all look.
Yes.
You know, they don't run away.
No.
Well, not much anyway.
That's the thing, the girls are very comfortable with people. They come into the milking parlour twice a day, so they're kind of, you know, used to that human interaction, and they're not scared away by us, which is nice.
That's good.
Yes. And yeah, the family have owned the farm since 1860, so it's nice to have had that handed generation to generation.
This cheese here, this is fantastic.
So this one's aged for between 12 and 18 months. Ideally, we would like to get them to 18 months, but with the selling out factor, we haven't been able to get there recently, so we're on about 12 months at the moment.
Is that nutty?
Do you get any fruitiness?
Yeah, and sweet. Yeah. And a little bit of pineapple in
Yes, well
Yeah?
spotted. So yes, it's pineapple and caramel and...
there. Or maybe with a glass of red wine as the sun sets over the sunset
I wouldn't
capital of New
complain.
Zealand. I'm heading towards Taoroa on the North Island to visit a small goat's milk farm near the Mountain of Love. This was the first dairy in the country to be given permission to make cheese from raw milk. And the beautiful 50-acre property is home to a small flock of very pampered Saanen and Anglo-Nubian breed goats. The couple produce a small range of Dutch-style Boer and Cast Gouda cheese, which is sold on a strictly pre-order basis.
Our business is based on love and passion.
So that's why you've got the lovely heart when you come in.
Yes. So everything goes back to us, to the girls. The cheese making is the last aspect. The girls is always the most important thing. That's where it starts. So they are very much part of the team because we couldn't do without them.
Yeah,
Here we go.
lovely. Now, okay.
So that is just plain.
So this is about 5 weeks old.
About 5, 6 weeks old. Yeah.
Smells lovely.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
It's got that lingering,
Yeah.
sweet,
That's what
and
people
slight
say.
lemony
Little bit-
flavour
yeah,
to it, but
yeah.
creamy too. Tell me about your battle for raw milk.
Okay. It started actually with your story before with the Roquefort, which New Zealand was allowed to import. So a lot of people started saying, hey, hang on, we are importing. Why can't we do it here ourselves? And in 2012, in December, we were the first one ever in New Zealand history to be registered to produce raw milk cheeses.
2012, the first
Ever in New
dairy
Zealand.
ever.
Ever. I mean, legally.
Of course, yeah.
You know, registered. So on the 20th, it was just before Christmas, and we couldn't have asked for a nicer Christmas present. Once the food safety authorities see, hang on, there's actually no one dying, everything is fine, you know. Farming the land properly, then you have healthy goats. Mm-hmm. Healthy goats produce healthy milk. And then on top of that, top hygiene and food safety procedures in the shade.
Yeah.
That's just simply that.
When I think about it, here you are, lovely little farm just below the mountains of love, making cheese with love and spreading the love.
Yes, we do.
You know, that really is almost worth a big hug.
Oh, it is a big hug, Riot. Yeah, it is a big hug, absolutely.
Thank you very much. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Another of the goat's cheeses highly recommended by Sarah at Canterbury Cheesemongers is produced by Crescent Dairy, not far from Auckland. Jan and John Walters have been operating this largely self-sufficient organic farm for almost 30 years and are among New Zealand's most awarded cheesemakers.
We started selling just raw milk to people, and those people said, why don't you try and make me some cheese? So Jan did, and was successful at the Cheese Awards, so that inspired her to make more cheese and more cheese.
They're really good-looking goats, really clean.
Yes, yeah.
All mixed up. Yeah.
We started with all Sarnans, and we initially crossed a lot with Toggenburgs, but more recently have crossed more with Nubians.
Nice big floppy ears.
Exactly, yes, yeah, big floppy ears, yeah.
So you've got a cheese called, is it called Red Devil? Washed right cheese?
It's called Dirty Devil.
Dirty Devil?
Yeah, dirty.
Yeah, is that named after you?
No way, no.
Or the Bucks?
No. It's named because it has a very distinctive aroma added to the fact that it's washed with brandy in the later stages of its life, so yeah.
Wow.
So I expect you'll get a chance to try that.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go and have a look at that now.
Okay. All right.
And you better get on with the milking, because these goats here, they're looking really, really tragic. We've been talking too long. And
they're certainly empty.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
All good cheese begins with good quality milk. And after seeing such healthy goats being milked, I'm curious to see how Jan turns it into cheese. This is the cheese before you wash it.
Yes, it'll come out of the mould today. Get a light bit of salt over the outside.
Yeah.
Then it goes into the cellar. It's turned every day, washed with salt every couple of days, and in the last week of its life, it gets washed with brandy. French brandy.
Only the best.
Yes. Well, you always need a little bit for the cheese and a little bit for the person that's putting it on.
Okay.
Quality control.
So can we go and see it being matured in the cellar?
You can, yeah.
That's really lovely. Creamy, a little bit salty, not strong at all in taste. No, nothing like it smells.
No.
That's always the funny thing about washed rind cheeses. You know, they stink like heaven, and you go, no, that's not right. I shouldn't eat it. And yet when you try them, they're lovely, just like this one.
They end up quite sweet, quite a sweet cheese.
Oh, you're right. A little bit around the edge.
It's nice.
A little textural kick.
This should be at room temperature. We're in cellar temperature here, but you've got a much wider piece of the flowy bit at room temperature. That's going to. Yeah.
The brandy really lifts it to another level. You're right. The symphony I get. I'd give you a gold any day.
Oh, thank you.
New Zealanders' growing interest in artisan cheese has been driven by traditional Dutch cheesemakers. And my next stop is a dairy widely recognised as one of the original pioneers. This farmhouse dairy is one of the oldest in New Zealand to produce cheese on the farm with milk from the farm. It's run by the Meyer family and they produce a Gouda-style cheese. Descending from a long line of cheesemakers in the Netherlands, the Meyer family have been making traditional cheese here since 1984 under the guidance of Ben Meyer.
In New Zealand we started in 1984.
And you started here on the farm? Or?
No, we first we didn't bring much money to buy a farm. We had just enough money to buy a small block, a two hectare block. We bought in milk, and that's where we start making cheese. The farm we bought in 1990. A big step from 2 hectares to 100 hectares with cows. Yes.
And you've got the whole family involved these days in making cheese?
Yes, we are very, very lucky that it is like that. And we cherish that.
Ironically, one of the things that helps make this family lineage so strong is that both sons actually left the farm to follow other careers before eventually returning to maintain their father's legacy.
I think it was because we worked so much as children, we almost had a little bit of resentment for the place because, you know, we'd seen our friends go on holiday and we're weird to come back here and work every weekend. And I'd watched Dad from a very, very young age making cheese, so he always said to me, if you can keep that quality component right up there, all the rest will come, and it really has done that. And I think for my brother as well, he worked even more than I did when we were younger, so him now as chief cheesemaker, you know, we work so well together, and then you see it with the products that we can put forward on the table.
This is a fantastic room.
Thanks, Will.
Really, really good. Wooden shelving?
Yeah, it is. It's all a untreated pine shelving, so a white pine here in New Zealand. It helps draw out of the moisture and it cleans really well, so it's something we're really fond of, and we would fight if it was going to get changed. So
that's good to hear.
The big winner for us is that consistency year on year. It's getting a gold medal, if not the Supreme Champions.
My next stop is one of the only 2 dairies in New Zealand making buffalo milk cheese. Its name is Funga Repo, and apparently they make an amazing burger using halloumi. The owners of this beautiful 50-acre farm took a giant leap of faith when they decided to import a small mixed herd of dairy buffalo from Australia and start making cheese. Annie has an agricultural degree and is described as the instigator of the buffalo scheme, whereas her partner, Phil, grew up on a dairy farm. To discover more about their unusual story, I joined Annie in the dairy. 17 buffalo arrived.
Yeah.
You've never made cheese before.
No.
You've never milked a buffalo before.
And they've never been milked before either.
And they'd never been milked before.
Yeah.
So that would have been, I wish I'd been here for that. That would have been fairly interesting.
Had its moments.
Yeah.
I don't think, luckily Phil ran away from a dairy farm when he was 17, his father's a dairy farmer, and went to sea. So he suddenly went from being a skipper on a fishing boat to milking water buffalo. Right. So his father got a few giggles out of that one. This will be our St. Benedict, the black logs. So it's essentially a brie style.
A black log brie style?
Yeah, we ash it.
A surface mould-ripened log with ash on it?
Exactly.
That's good. I like that. It's not a brie, is it?
Well, it's not really. We don't, because it's the easiest way to describe it to people, because we kind of make things up and then go, oh, it's kind of like this. And people are like, okay, we can cope with that.
And why do you call it St. Benedict? You've discovered sort of religion somewhere.
You'd almost wonder if you've discovered God. We haven't really, but maybe it's a Catholic school we send the kids to. I don't know.
And you have a booming market in burgers and...
Well, you know when you bring things in and it's all about the cheese and the milk, and suddenly you've got a whole lot of boys.
So because they got out...
Because they got out and it was in public in my pyjamas and somebody videoed it.
Hasn't been forgiven.
It's never been forgiven. All boys are burgers.
All boys are burgers?
All boys bar a couple that we keep for stud bulls. And they've got to be nice ones that won't get out.
Something smells really good round here.
Well, it is. This is one of our very good halloumi burgers, if you fancy one.
The halloumi, the famous halloumi. What have you got in here?
Beetroot, a little of tomato relish, and that's our form of labneh, which is we call grado with the buffalo milk and Italian herbs. So it's all quite tasty.
Very good. This is a prize winner. Really good. Really good. My final destination is a small town called Kati Kati, near Taronga Harbour, where I've arranged to meet cheesemakers Chris and Jill Whaley. The reason I'm here is that they were the first to be granted official approval by the authorities to make cheese from raw cow's milk and are responsible for Mount Eliza cloth-bound red Leicester.
The traditional way of doing it is with the bandage, of course. This allows the cheese to breathe a bit more, allows more of the flavours to come through as the whey evaporates from the cheese as it matures. When we started, all our cheese was bandaged. Over the last couple of years, we do some coated as well, because it looks cleaner, it's easier to handle.
Jill and Chris went on to explain how challenging it was to convince the local authorities to sign off on the production of cheese made from raw milk.
A number of occasions where I just felt like just throwing in the towel, really, and just deciding it was just too hard. With the raw milk cheese, you have a number of controls right the way through the process. You know, from your acidity development, your rate of acidity development, the moisture, the salt, the maturation. And these are monitored continually through the process. So in a lot of ways, raw milk cheese is actually safer than pasteurised milk cheese.
Oh, look at that. Look at the texture. Now that is really better than about any red Leicester I've had in UK for years. That's really, really good.
That's what I tell my customers, it's better than the real thing. Better than the imitation you get in England.
That's really good. Excellent. Well, that's it from Cheese Slices in New Zealand. This really has been a fascinating trip. Wonderfully passionate people, beautiful countryside, and some really interesting artisan cheeses. What more do you want?
Cheese slices in New Zealand.
Join me and Pixie for Cheese Slices New Zealand.
Hey Jimmy, what's this? I didn't invite the laughing cow on my show.
What's wrong with it, mate? Come on.
Oh, come on, processed cheese.
It's my favourite.
What do you do?
Cheese Slices New Zealand!
Eba good. That's really, really good.